Welcome to Markets Plus. I'm Eduardo Tobon, co-creator of the Latino Leaders Index 500 and managing director and Florida East Market executive for BMO Wealth Management in the United States. This year marked the fourth year of the Latino Leaders Index 500, powered by BMO, a key benchmark that continues to spotlight the scale, sophistication, and economic impact of Latino-owned businesses across the United States. The insightful conversations continue with Jorge Ferraez, founder and publisher of Latino Leaders magazine, as he moderates a discussion with Javier Palomarez, president and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Business Council, and Alfredo Duarte, CEO of Taxco Produce. Together, Javier and Alfredo share their perspectives on centering their Latino identity in their businesses and how resilience, authenticity, and willingness to create opportunity can help build organizations that thrive across generations.
Welcome to Markets Plus, where leading experts from across BMO discuss factors shaping the markets, economy, industry sectors, and much more. Visit bmocm.com/marketsplus for more episodes.
In a most anticipated panel, we are honored to have two amazing speakers with the title of The Business of Culture, Turning Latino Identity into Competitive Advantage. Let me introduce you to Javier Palomarez, who serves as President and Chief Executive Officer of the United States Hispanic Business Council, leading the organization's mission to advance economic opportunity, public policy advocacy, and national visibility for Hispanic-owned and small businesses across Texas and the United States. In this role, he sets UHSBC's strategic direction, represents the voice of entrepreneurs and job creators in national policy conversations, and builds partnerships with corporate leaders, elected officials, and community stakeholders to ensure Hispanic businesses have a seat at the table where decisions are made. Javier recently was appointed to the Wall Street Journal Board of Directors Council. We also have with us Alfredo Duarte, who is President and CEO of Taxco Produce, a Dallas-based food service distributor and premier importer of Mexican and Hispanic food products, serving the Texas and surrounding regional markets. Founded in 1985, Taxco Produce has grown from small produce operation into a full-line distributor supporting more than 1,000 restaurants, retailers, and food service operations. Alfredo was personally selected by President George W. Bush to be included in the book Out of Many, One, Portraits of American Immigrants in 2021, which highlights 43 immigrants whose stories exemplify the American dream. Alfredo is one of the individuals painted and profiled by President Bush, recognizing his journey from immigrating to the United States to building Taxco Produce. Moderating the panel, we have Jorge Ferraez, the president and publisher of Latino Leaders magazine.
All right. You two are two great examples of what can be done from your own unique perspectives and trenches. You have made an enormous success of what you've done. So since you were already introduced, I want to start with asking Javier, in terms of knowing where the community needs to advance, where do we need to go? What are the different economical, financial circumstances, and identifying those opportunities to go. So when we come to say, okay, the Latino business owners and Latino companies, sometimes we feel that there's like a disadvantage because we are Latinos or we are a minority-owned group or company. But if we flip the tortilla and we start thinking in, okay, why should it be a disadvantage and not an advantage, right? What if that thing makes us unique? It should be some advantages behind that. So the first question I want to ask you is, what risks comes when we are centering the Latino identity in business, and how do leaders need to manage that?
First of all, I don't see it as a disadvantage. I never have. Being Latino to me has always been a gift. It's an understanding of a totally different culture, a work ethic, a sense of community, And so I've made it when I was in corporate America, I made it my goal to help the organizations that I worked for understand this burgeoning market. And I did it at Sprint when we first got into the Hispanic marketplace and did a partnership with Telmex. I did it at Allstate. I think Allstate was the first American company. Honda was actually number one. Tells you a lot about the Japanese culture. Yeah. But Allstate was the first American company to advertise totalmente en español en Sábado Gigante, and we did a contract with Don Francisco. So you buy your insurance from Allstate, as he used to call it, and our numbers went through the roof. But for me, it was always about taking that culture, the knowledge, the understanding, which was, you were born with it. Alfredo certainly was born with it, and that hustle, and then converting that into, frankly, an advantage that could inform the strategy of the company around growth and profitability and new markets. That's the way I've always seen it, though.
Now, going to the business case, Alfredo, you have been an enormous entrepreneur, and you have brought with you from your origins culture, values, abilities that you grew up with. So how has embracing your identity as a Latino, as a Mexican that immigrated here, has opened doors, or maybe the other case, created resistance in your career, in your business career?
I'll tell you what, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, and BMO, thank you. I actually don't do this thing for a living. I sell tomatoes and avocados. And so it's being a Latino and started the business has been a great advantage to us because of the culture that we bring over here to this country. It was an adaptation. I adapted to everything that I saw when I came to the country. And it took me, the world belongs to the people that can adapt fast enough to things. I think that was one thing that it was clear in my mind. Everything else was pretty natural to me as far as the work ethic. All those are things that came with me from my parents. The way they raised us up to be this kind of person that was honest, that was hardworking, and always taking in consideration that you are part of a bigger thing. So that's more like it what I think about your question. I don't see any disadvantages. I never really had any disadvantages. I think everything that I have confronted is always has had an opportunity. If you start looking at disadvantages and then you start putting yourself a fence in front of you, you can't do that. You just have to capitalize what's in front of you and actually just visually stay focused where you're going.
All right. Yeah, it is, and very good. Thank you for sharing those things. Now, going back to you, Javier, you are in the top of promoting and companies and corporations, and you know their business habits and strategies and all that. How can these companies, not only Latino companies, but the companies to sell to Latinos, how can they approach marketing and marketing strategies without kind of making that stereotyping and making that sometimes people feel offended?
Before I answer the question, I have to say, you're right. I do know a bunch of CEOs and chairmen, people who we all hear and talk about, but I get a bigger thrill out of hanging out with a guy like Alfredo. I wrote the foreword to George W. Bush's 2 books on immigration. And I saw him in Salt Lake City, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And he gave me the book, which I still have in my living room. And he said, "You want me to sign it?" I said, "Yeah, but could you get me Alfredo's signature?" And he said, "Come on, Tejano." And both him and I used to pick produce. I used to pick tomatoes. That's what I did. And I'm sitting next to a guy who took that and did something with it and now creates American jobs, creates economic development, pays American taxes, and is driving an American company. That's the American dream. That's the living embodiment of the American dream. And in the Latino community, that story is repeated over and over. What we haven't done, except for you, is we have not done a good enough job of chronicling that story and telling it to the rest of America. We're a community of contributors. We love this nation. And I always say the only thing I'm prouder of than being Hispanic is being American. And we are a community that is reporting for duty. And we have been reporting for hundreds of years. And if it were not for you, Jorge, I don't know that anybody's telling our story. So back to your question, how do you do it without stereotyping? You have to be authentic. You have to have a good product. Oftentimes, minority communities, immigrant communities get undersold. And oftentimes, it doesn't happen as much now, but oftentimes companies underestimate our ability to discern good from bad, a good investment, a good buy. They don't give us credit for being a sophisticated audience and a sophisticated investor and buyer. But in fact, we are. And I think companies now are getting it. When I came up, man, the mistakes were everywhere, everywhere. And it was almost insulting. But I think corporations have begun to kind of get it. And I don't think there's a major corporation today that doesn't have a product or a service or a strategy aimed at the Hispanic community, and rightly so. If you look at our community, I think our spending power is just north of $4 trillion. $4 trillion. I mean, that's a larger number than the GDPs of France. It's a larger than the GDP of Germany, of Italy, of Brazil, of India, of Mexico. It just goes on. It is a behemoth. Above and beyond that, if you look out 10, 15 years and you're a smart marketer, you want to be around 10, 15 years from now. And if you look at that and consider where the growth of the American population is coming from, over the last decade, Latinos represented 53% of the overall growth of this nation. So if you remove Hispanics from the population growth of America, we start to flatten out and then decrease. That's the death of a nation when you don't have birth rates anymore. And the last time the census shared information, which was 22 to the end of 23, Hispanics, get this, Hispanics represented 70% of the growth of the overall American population. You remove us and the market goes away. It's on us to start to really demand product and service that reflects our needs, our culture, our desires, because we will spend. And the good news is, for me, and Allstate, again, was a great training ground for me. If you're willing to invest, this is still one of the most loyal consumers in the world. Porque if dad bought it, el tío lo va a comprar, y el primo también, y el cuñado, because everybody kind of follows that. And if a company treats that first guy right, then he'll tell the next one, and that one will tell the next one, and it kind of spreads, and we still stick. So the good news is, for a corporation, this is probably the most loyal consumer segment in the world.
That's amazing. Yes, of course. It's not only that, it's the future of this nation, right? The market and the population of this country, it won't exist if it will be for the Latinos.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 78% of the net new entrants, of brand new workers in the American workforce over the next decade will be of Hispanic descent. Think about that. You have an aging white demographic that is retiring at a breakneck pace, and it's getting faster as guys reach my age, which is pretty old. And then you have the new people coming into the workforce, and these are brand new workers. They've never been on the payroll before. 78% of those will be of Hispanic descent. So no matter how you look at it, let the numbers do the talking, learn your numbers, and pitch it from that perspective, and you're gonna make your point.
Now, we understand the numbers and are amazing, but we must remember always, like the Index 500, what is important is not only the numbers, but the stories behind the numbers.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Who are those people? What are they doing? How did they came and build what they...
Why does it matter?
From nothing.
Yeah.
So Alfredo, what if you could name, for example, 3 of the main virtues or abilities that you needed to develop for growing your business? What would those 3 be?
Not that I planned when I came to this country to be a businessman. That was not in my right. It was survival. It was making a little money to send back home and take care of help my father and my mother. And then the necessity of continue to build something here is what really made me go and build the company. Some of the things that really stuck to me is those things that my father always said: be honest, be a man of your word. When you promise something, do it. And have respect, a lot of respect for the people that you do business, your friends, everybody. So one of the things that I tell my salespeople when they go and sell is I tell them, I say, be careful. When you go and solicit the business of somebody and that person decides to give it to you, at that point, it becomes your responsibility. He's going to rely on you for that. Also, in the presentation, you have to present how are you going to make a difference in his business? How are you going to make a difference in your business? They're not going to give you their business just because. You have to bring something into the table. And so, taking in consideration all those things, it's how you start building the trust of people. Trust is so important. It's very easy to say now that a lot of people know me, a lot of my customers know me, but 40 years ago when we started the company, we were knocking on doors and they give you maybe 5% of their business and then you run over and they didn't make any money, but they just were building trust. That's what you were doing. You have to put yourself over there and they need to understand that you really mean to do good for their businesses.
Now, that trust that you are mentioning, I think is so important in terms of us getting more business. But I want to go back to Javier and you. How can we make that trust to go beyond ourselves? Because we have seen ourselves celebrating our successes and talking about ourselves, but sometimes we preach to the choir. How can we really make Main America, the main community, business communities, and really identify that identity, those values that we have?
I think it really is about understanding that every time there's a customer interaction, it's a covenant. There's an implied contract, if not an actual contract. You look at the world that he lives in, you sell a pocket square, it has pretty good shelf life. You sell a pair of shoes or a beer or a bottle of water, has pretty good shelf life. Tomatoes don't. Nothing can go wrong. It's got to be there on time. It can't sit in the truck for an extra night. It's got to be edible and fresh and even look right and smell right before it ever makes it to the grocery store shelf or that restaurant kitchen. And so the trust that is put into that relationship, you have to understand that guy's livelihood depending on you. And it sounds simple, but it's not. And when you begin to understand even the smallest little machinations, even the smallest little promises and commitments matter, I think that has a lot to do with our culture and how we can take that culture of cuando das tu palabra, you keep it. You say you're going to do something, you do it. It's the whole team bought into that. And we live or we perish by the word of the last person that made that commitment. And we're all in. Everybody's in. And so for us, it's about, you say you're going to do something, then we're going to do it. And we may not make any money out of it. It always comes back. And it is true that a client has a bad experience and he'll tell 10 people. But if he has a good experience, he'll tell 2 or 3. And you know what? You build enough clients that are happy with you, they'll be happy to tell 2 or 3 people. And that's how you build a solid book of business. So for my association, it really is about being strategic, being careful, remembering that once one bought in, we all bought in, and we're all accountable, and remembering always that the work is bigger than any one of us. To Alfredo's example, that he's got a sales guy out there, Alfredo's not committed to it, and everybody else down the chain up until that sales guy. And so we feel about it kind of the same way at the USHBC. We're all in or we're all out.
Now, one thing is business and the other thing is corporate. Corporate is another big component of our economy, right?
Yeah.
The decisions that corporate makes is they drive this country in many senses. And we Latinos have been advancing in corporate, in the boardroom, in the C-suite level, in managerial positions and all that. What are the big challenges? And you've been there. Your U.S. Council is about that. And you've been there in the USHEC, and you've been there in many other organizations, always dealing with corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
What are the big challenges of Latinos in corporate America?
I think the number one challenge is I refer to it as a leadership gap. But the leadership gap is not because we don't have leaders in our community. It's not because we don't have the talent in our community. It's not because we don't have the work ethic in our community. It's because we don't have enough champions in our community to ensure that we're getting a fair shot. My mentors were John McCain, John Lewis, Al Sharpton, Mark Morial, who still, I talk to him at least once a week. Now with that, you got to be prepared, you got to be ready, but our community is prepared. We are ready. We do have the talent. But still, and unfortunately, when corporate America thinks about diversity, they think in black and white. And that leaves us out. So we have to take it upon ourselves to re-educate the corporate structure and ensure that we're also being looked at on the same playing field. And when that doesn't happen, it's time for guys like me to step in. I look at organizations like BMO. They're in the community. They're working it. They show up. They're involved. These guys are engaged. They're involved. They show it. They show up, and they're there for us. And that's investment, and that's investment that pays off. It takes work. It takes effort. It takes guts. You got to take the risk. But we are a good community. We are a good investment. And what I would not advise is if you're in corporate America, don't you pick the fight. But we were not afraid of the fight because we were right. And we have the facts behind us. And I have a community of people like this that are the living embodiment of success and potential in this country. And if you got that, you're not going to lose the fight. Just go in. Don't be afraid.
That's it. The business stories cannot be understood if you don't talk about the failures. You don't talk about the mistakes, and you don't talk about what went wrong, that especially that made you grow and get up, get back on your feet again, and keep the fight. So do you remember any of these moments, any of these decisions that you made, probably that were not the best decisions at that time, or that you consider being wrong decisions, but at some point helped you or taught you how to go next time and how to keep growing?
Every company has a story, and we make mistakes and things that come to us that we don't know how to deal with. But then you have to make a decision. I give you a few examples. My biggest achievement in business was not what I have now. Was convincing my partner to quit his job at 30 years with 8 kids, his house, and come and make no money for 3 years. That was my biggest achievement. He was a great salesperson. And then about a month after he left the company, he gets this big offer from the company where he was working. Hey, come back, we need you.
Yeah.
And then he goes and talks to me, and he said, I'm going to go back. My family is kind of forcing me to go back. That evening, I went and sat down in his house and outside his house, and I said, Jesse, he was 44 years old. In 10 years, you'll be obsolete. This market is going to change. You won't be the salesman you are right now. It will be a lot of salespeople. But what we build it right now is ours. Mm. And nobody's going to be able to fire. But that was a great decision. Next morning, that he was working across the street, I was picking up some merchandise, and there comes Jesse walking through. I said, "Don't you supposed to be over there?" I said, "You better be right that we're going to be okay." You better be okay. So that was one thing. When I lost my house, I could have very easily go back to work and rescue my house and everything and all that, but then it wouldn't have stayed through what I was feeling that I wanted to do. So there is things The other thing that it was in those years was very prevalent is to convince the people that actually you didn't have to convince them. They wanted you to do it. Some of the managers and businesses they were taking money underneath the desk and things like that. And one of the things that we agree, Jesse and I, is never do that. We're never gonna do that. And so there's things like that they happen. We never really, probably the biggest thing with us, with Jesse and I, when a lot of people here were learning and going to preparing themselves for university, I was milking goats in the mountains of Durango. That's what I was doing. And so we started the business and we kind of grow that business slowly. We never borrow any money at all. Everything we made, we reinvested in the business. Two things that I wanted to just add to my market is that we have a Latino community. We cannot put the Latino community in one bag. The Colombians, the Venezuelans, Mexicans. So that is a mistake that a lot of businesses do. And the African American community is one, the Anglo is one, but then when you come to Latinos, it's a big mistake to put them in one bag. You have to cater to them differently.
What defines success for you?
What defines success for me is just sitting in a room like this, talking to a guy like you, next to a man like that. I grew up, I was a migrant farm worker. I lived in a house with no floor, no air conditioning, no indoor plumbing. I started más o menos learning English. I still haven't, but using it at around the age of 13. Got lucky, got discovered, went to college on a scholarship from the Wall Street Journal. But I got picked up and the Wall Street Journal gave me in 1985 the Wall Street Journal Student Achievement Award. And you talk about coming full circle. Now I sit on the board of directors of the Wall Street Journal Council. So it's surreal, but if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Maybe at the time when we started, there was numbers and making money and everything. But then you achieve all these things and money and everything. Success is what you can do for your community, for the people, for the next generation.
That's right, brother.
For the next generation. That is, how do you affect, with everything you achieve, the rest of the world? That to me is very important. That's why I'm worried.
All right.
Because there is people behind this that is incredible people. And so to me, defining success is what you can do for the rest. Don't forget that nothing works without your workers, the people that work for you. You need to really continue to raise those workers and bring them with you. It's great to make money, but it's great to see them progress and become with money too. I came from nothing, so I'm really proud to see some of my workers having a better car than me. So great. So just to put that out there. Never forget the people that is your team, the ones that really make it happen with you. The ideas and everything, you put them there, but without them, nothing works.
Yeah, my mom used to say, "Tu misión no es nada sin la gente que la lleva."
Exacto.
Gentlemen, you are two true examples of leadership. Congratulations and thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Yes.
Muchas gracias.
Thanks for listening. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. For more episodes, visit bmocm.com/marketsplus.
The views expressed here are those of the participants and may not necessarily represent those of BMO Capital Markets, its affiliates, or subsidiaries. For BMO disclosures, please visit bmocm.com/podcast/disclaimer.